Okay, welcome back to educator.com. This lesson is on multiplying decimals. When you multiply decimals together, it's very different than when you're adding and subtracting decimals. Make sure the rules are very different, so try not to get confused between the two. So remember when you add and subtract the decimals, you have to line up the decimal point, and then you add and subtract, and then you bring the decimal point straight down into the answer. For when you multiply decimals, you don't worry about the decimal point at all. Okay, so if I'm going to multiply two numbers, let's say 1.1 and 6, I don't have to line up the decimal point. Make sure you don't do that. Just all you have to do is multiply the numbers without having any consideration for the decimal point. So I'm just going to ignore it. So I'm going to multiply this. It's going to be 6 and then 66, right? And then what you do is you count the total number of decimal places from the numbers you multiplied. So from these two numbers, this one and this one, you're going to count to see how many numbers are behind the decimal point. So here I have one number, and then here I have none, right? Because the decimal point is behind the 6. So from these two numbers, from 1.1 and 6, I only have one number behind the decimal point. Then I go to my answer and I place one number behind the decimal point. So then the last number is 6, so I'm going to put the decimal point right there, 6.6. Okay? So let's do a few examples. 0.2 times 0.6. So again, I'm going to multiply the numbers without considering the decimal points. So 6 times 2 is 12. And I don't have to multiply those zeros together, so it's just 12. Now from this number, from these two numbers, the two numbers that I multiplied, I'm going to see how many numbers I have behind the decimal point. So from this number I have 1, and this number I have another 1. So I have 2 total. So I go to my answer and I'm going to place 2 numbers behind the decimal point. So it's going to become 0.12, okay, or 0.12 or 0.12. I can put a 0 up here too. Okay, this is the whole number, and there's we don't have any whole numbers, so it's just 0. Another example, if Susan works 25.5 hours per week and she earns $9.40 an hour, how much does she earn in a week? Okay, so this is how many hours she works in a week, and this is how much she earns per hour. So to figure out how much she earns in a whole week, I have to multiply how many hours she worked with how much she makes per hour. So it's going to be 25.5 times $9.40. So again, when I multiply these numbers, I'm just going to line up the numbers. I don't care about the decimal point. 25.5 and then times 9.40. You're just lining up the numbers, okay? Okay, so let's multiply the 0. Now 0 times 0 is going to be all zeros. So I'm just going to move on to the next number. 4 times 5 is 20. This is 22. 8, 9, 10. Okay, then 9 times 5 is 45. 45, that's 49. 18, that's 22. So these are just zeros here. So it's 0, 0, 7, 9, 3, and 2. Okay, so here is my answer when I multiply these two numbers together. Now I have to look at my decimal point. So the first number, so I look at these two numbers, the two numbers that I multiplied. I have one number here behind the decimal point, and I have 2 numbers here. So how many numbers do I have total? I have 3. Okay. So then I go to my answer, and then I count 3 numbers. Make sure that I have 3 numbers behind my decimal point. Okay. So it's going to be 237.7. Now I'm dealing with money here because I'm trying to figure out how much she earns in a week, right? So this is going to be in money. So I'm going to have a $. So it becomes $239.70. Okay, this is how much she's going to earn in a week. Okay? Okay, the next example, I have 0.21 times 2.1. So 0.21, or I can read this as 21 hundredths, because I have 2 numbers. This is tenths, this is hundredths. So this would be 21 hundredths times 2.1. Again, I'm not going to line up the decimal point. So 2.1, or 2 and 1/10. So when I multiply this out, ignore the decimal point, okay? And then 2 times 1, I write that here, that's 2, and then 2 times 2 is 4, okay? You don't have to look at this number. If you want, you can just write that down. So 1 times 0 is 0, that goes there. And then I add these down, right? So 1 plus nothing is 1, 2 plus 2 is 4, and this is 4. So now I look at my numbers. How many numbers do I have behind decimal points? So here I have 2, and then here I have another one. So I have 3 total. So I'm going to go to my answer. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3. Okay. So my answer, I have to make sure that there's going to be 3 numbers, the same number of numbers behind this decimal point. So it's going to be 0.441, okay, or 0.441. And you can read this as 441 thousandths, because I have 3 numbers and this is the thousandths place. Okay, so this is my answer when I multiply 0.21 times 2.1. Okay, the 4th example, I'm going to multiply these 2 numbers, 4.08 and 1.35. So 4 and 8 hundredths. Now again, when I multiply these decimals together, I'm just going to ignore my decimal points. So I'm just going to line up the numbers, just like I do when I multiply whole numbers. So this just happens to line up because there's the same number of numbers. So multiply this out. 8 times 5 is 40. 0 and 4. This is 20. And this is 24. 0, 2. This is 12 here. Then this is 8, 0, and 4. I add them down. 0, this is 8, this is 10, 2, 4, 5, and this is also 5. Okay. So from here, after I multiply my 2 numbers, I'm going to look at the actual numbers that I multiplied, and I'm going to count how many numbers I have behind decimal points. So for this one, I have 2 numbers behind the decimal point, and here I also have 2. So total I have behind the decimal points 4 numbers. Okay, so you look at just these 2 numbers that you multiplied together. Okay, and I have 4 numbers total behind decimal points. So I go to my answer and I make sure that there's 4 numbers behind decimal point, and that's going to help me place the decimal point. So 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 numbers. I'm place a decimal point right there. Okay. So since there's 4 numbers behind decimal points here, there has to be 4 numbers behind the decimal point in the answer. It's going to be 5.5080. Or this number, it's a 0 at the end of a number behind the decimal point, so I can just drop it if I want. Or you can leave it, it doesn't matter. So it could be 5 and 508 thousandths. Okay? So either way, this can be the answer or this can be the answer. Okay, so that's it for this lesson on multiplying decimals. Thank you for watching educator.com.